Gwen was sighing in annoyance since she thought they were going somewhere she could relax and get some sun while the boys were fishing, and said she thought they were going somewhere fun. Max then responds, telling her that you never know what you might catch down there in Undertown, and starts talking about the last fishing trip down there. She tells them to stop, not wanting to know anymore about that, as Magister Patellidae had accidentally eaten the bait they were using, and he says he's got another can. Rook then says that he has read up on something referred to as noodling and put some bait on his arm and stuck it into the water. After a moment, he picks his arm up and they see he'd gotten a large fish on his arm, and Gwen says that she thinks she's gonna be sick watching that. Patellidae decides to dive in to see what he can catch by swimming around under the water, and ends up falling for the same trick Rook just did, as some metal crabs got him to bite onto one of their claw-like hooks and grabbed him to haul him away. There was a beeping, which was Patellidae trying to contact them. Answering it, he tells them that there's robots in the drink. Max tells them to hold on, and Ben dives into the water, telling the Omnitrix to please give him depth charge, before hitting it down and changing into a new blue-skinned alien with fins that had a face mask and a wetsuit. Gwen calls out that she'd go too, and Ben asked how she thinks she'll do that. When she's not exactly able to breathe underwater, she'd be trapped in a bubble. Diving into the water, Gwen tells him to watch, as she then says some incantation he hadn't heard her use before, as her body began to glow with the powdery blue sparkling glittery energies, as part of her skin began to change to be like scales with small fins appearing. Her ears had also become fins too. Her body then changed further, giving her a blue mermaid-like tail, and gills appeared on her neck. Ben questions since when she can do that, staring at Gwen, saying how beautiful she was in her mermaid-like form, and she tells him she's been learning more advanced magic while at college, and she kisses his mask where his lips would be. Then says they need to go save Patellidae. Nodding, he calls out that Max and Rook should follow the signal in the boat, that way there will be someone ready in case the guys that grabbed him decide to surface. While swimming after them, Gwen asks if those are robot crabs, and Ben says looks like it, as he focuses the water around them towards his hand, and fires it forward, busting through one of them, making it go limp, but there were still others, with Gwen using her magic to cast a small whirlpool towards the front where the one that had the Magister was. Though it had managed to slip past, it did redirect the others back towards them. Ben asked if she can get them all together in a big sphere, and Gwen nods, creating another whirlpool spell to get them all close together, and puts a sphere around them, as he starts to focus the water around them again, drawing in more than what he'd done previously, so much he'd had to focus it using both hands, and told her to give him an opening. After she'd done so, he hurled the focused water into the sphere, as she closed it back up, with the crab robots trying to break out of it, as whatever Ben had unleashed reached the middle and exploded, breaking apart the shield and all of the robots along with it. She says that was impressive, as they continued trying to free their fellow plumber from the other robots. Hearing something, they swim up to the surface and see a fall not too far away, as Max and Rook were approaching and come to a stop to regroup. Ben tells them that he's been this way before. There's a fall just down that way where the crab had gone, but nothing at the bottom but water. Let the boat go first, then once it drifted to a safe distance, they can dive down over the falls. They do as Ben suggested, with the boat going first, then the rest of them followed once it was safe. The next scene we see, they'd gotten the boat tipped right side up, and Max and Rook were in it, though they'd hit a snag coming across two pathways. Max asked which way they should hit, and Ben charges up water rings around his wrists before firing them into the canyons, as the ears on his mask twitched like he was listening. After a moment, Ben says the faster route is to the right, however the path to the left is unguarded, so there wouldn't be anything to stand in their way if they hurried. Hearing this, Max then hit the left path as they continued on, going off the beaten path, and found the spaceship, or was it a submarine, of whomever nabbed Patellidae. Rook and Max jumped onto the ship, running inside, hearing it making beeping sounds as if it was preparing to dive, as everything on the ship was beginning to close up. Though Ben and Gwen weren't able to make it, as it had already closed up before they could pull themselves onto the craft. Ben contacts Max on communications line, telling them he he and Gwen would find another way in, just find Patellidae. The two of them then continued around, finding some sort of opening point, and swim down to it, with him diving down through the gap, realizing there was air, and the water somehow wasn't entering into the ship. He'd changed back to human. Gwen follows down after Ben, and drops down with him catching her bridal style, and him joking that he's got the catch of the day, making her roll her eyes. Still, he got a kiss for the effort, and she used magic to return to normal and looked around, seeing a bunch of giant bottles with ships inside of them, and seeing that there were people waving at them for help, some looking weak. Ben changed into blocks, and the two of them began blasting holes in the bottles to allow airflow into them, helping the people to look like they were starting to be able to feel better, as an alarm started blaring, and Gwen says, "Guess they know they're here now," as they kept breaking holes in the bottles for people to allow them to breathe. The captain of the ship shows up and demands to know what's going on, as Ben went from blasting the bottles to blasting him and the robot crabs in the face with his bricks, knocking them back and shaping his fists into hammers. As he started bashing away, every time they'd break, he'd just regrow new hammers and keep swinging. Max then appeared with Rook and Patellidae, and they joined in the fighting as well. And with them all working together, they were able to handle the robots fairly well as the captain of the ship. They activated the controls of the ship, bringing it to the surface before ejecting the other ships, getting them out of those bottles. Rook says that the fishing trip did not go exactly as planned. However, they were able to capture a criminal, so the day was not a total loss. Max adds that they also had a ship to send back to the lot for processing. So that's two good things to come from the trip today, which wasn't bad. Ben says there's three good things from today, and the others look at him as he lifted up Gwen bridal style, and says he got to see her as a mermaid after all, and how many guys get to say that?